Good to see you. How are you? Very good. What I did, if I did, I would have definitely used it. Oh, let's all do what Jackie just did. Bro. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so it sounds like we may have some people joining us as we go along, but let's just dive in. And that is the astrology of time. And every human culture throughout all history has studied the stars in some way or another. This is the original way it's the changes in light that define how we track time. And so we're going to go into some of the astronomy of astrology. Why does the light move where it does from our perspective? And then we'll go from the quantitative, what are we measuring in terms of length of time, into the qualitative, and what are the different types of time and what energetic signatures do those portions of time have. And then if we have time at the end, we'll get into some very specific suggestions for how to organize your day, organize your time, day to day, week to week, month to month, that sort of thing. Welcome, come on in, please. Yeah, hello. No worries, just getting started here. And there's plenty more questions in here if you want to. No. So I'll just briefly introduce myself. I know some new in here. So my name is David McConaughey. I am an Ayurvedic doctor and a Vedic astrologer. I have a master's degree in metaphysics. I'm working on a doctorate in divinity, and I have been studying Ayurveda and astrology in a focused way for about 12 years now. And I have a private practice. I am creating a collection of online courses, and I love teaching classes like this. So I'm glad that you're here. And we are recording this on multiple levels. There's video and audio happening. So if you have not signed, if you want the recording, I'll send you an email with it. Just make sure you give me your email just before you leave. Okay, let's dive right in. So like I said, every human culture throughout all time has studied the stars, tracked the movement of the planets, tracked the sun and moon. I mean, the original humans are sun-worshipping cultures because the sun provides all the heat, safety, food, life, everything comes from the sun. And so many different approaches to astronomy and astrology used to be the exact same thing. And so what we're going to talk about today specifically comes from South India and really the whole of South Asia. The Vedic culture once upon a time was, all of India, but also Pakistan and Afghanistan, and all that whole region was this rich hub of activity and culture and knowledge. So this word Jyotish is the Sanskrit word for astrology. Vedic astrology is the term that we use. And that word Jyoti means light. And so Jyotish is literally the study of light, the science of light. And we are interpreting omens. That's on a grander scale what astrology is studying omens. And so I know astrologers who will, a snake crossed my path moving east to west, and it was a yellow snake on a Tuesday, and that means something. And you can interpret reality, and everything that's happening in 3D reality is an omen if we're tuned into the flow of the cosmos in that way. The most obvious and predictable omens are in the sky, the movement of the stars and planets. And so that's what we're looking at with Jyotish. Yeah, the observation of luminous beings as a means of attuning to the cosmic rhythm, tracking light as it moves through space as a way to understand what's happening as we move through time. That's really what astrology is tracking how time changes light as it moves through space. And if you can recognize yourself as just a dense bundle of light waves, then really what's happening when we're looking, where light is hitting our eyes and bouncing off our retinas and then back out, projecting these images onto our brain. And as time passes, the light is changing around us, changing what we perceive as we all move around in space. And so that's sort of the microcosm here on Earth. And then the movement of stars and planets in the sky is the macrocosm in the cosmos. Does that make sense? This phrase, I think about, this is like tattooed on my brain, how time changes light as it moves through space.
You just say it slowly.
Yeah, yeah. How does light change as time moves through space? Well, we're going to look at some pictures that'll hopefully show that. Yeah. How does light change as time moves through space? Okay, so yesterday we talked about the 5 elements of Ayurveda. Jyotish is based on those same 5 elements: ether, air, fire, water, earth. And this division between Jyotish and Ayurveda is something that I just made up. This is not in the classical text or anything. This is just to say that generally Jyotish is focused on, the space, outer space, the space that contains all of creation, which is ether. And then if you're going to move through space, it requires time. You to get from A to B, you can't just teleport there. There's a duration, and so there's time. And so time is moving through space. Well, the time itself moves through space. And then as movement creates heat. Movement takes energy and it generates heat. And so we've got space, time, and light. These are the ingredients of existence that we're going through here. What is reality made of? Well, space and time are primary. And then movement, if time is movement through space, movement generates heat. And so the heat and light and energy. And then where we get into Ayurveda is when things start to cohere and start to densify into physical bodies and forms. That's where water starts to pull things together. Water is our best metaphor for the emotional body. And it's really our emotions and our feeling sense that ties us all together. The fire element, Agni, is this very rational, calculating, discerning thing. This is for me. This is you're you, I'm me. That's this categorizing energy of fire. But then water is not rational. Water, our emotional bodies, we will do crazy things for people we love. You don't need a calculation or a rational reason, but it's because that connective force of the water element ties us all together and will do unreasonable things. So that's this connecting, this unifying force. So the doshas cohere and then solidify, and that earth element gives specificity, structure, where like I have a solid body. Yes, we're all connected in the ocean of emotion, but I have this particular physical body with a beginning and an end, and that's our earth element. So it's water and earth, more Ayurveda based, whereas Jyotish is more outer space. And well, just creating creation, just trying to explain everything in existence. No big deal, just casual Sunday afternoon. So scopes. We all know a telescope. Tele means from a distance, right? So with a telescope, we can see distant stars and things far away on the horizon. And there's a microscope where we can see otherwise invisible things that go down into subparticles, tiny little atoms, right? A horoscope or an hour scope is a scope into time. And so when you read your horoscope in the newspaper, or on my newsletter or whatever, that's what we're looking at. It's a scope into time to see what is otherwise unseeable, right? A telescope helps us see things in space that we couldn't see otherwise. Microscope helps us see microscopic things that we can't see otherwise. The horoscope helps us see into the nature of time, which is otherwise invisible. So this is the scope that we're using here. Words.
You put them together, though, you don't get that light bulb.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Okay. A map of space will show you the terrain and the pathways and the rivers and other attributes. This being astrology, Jyotish. Map of time this is a map of time showing the paths of planets and rivers of hours and other attributes of time. Most people are familiar with the quantitative nature of time. Christ was born, everything's a straight line out into the future from there. Quantitative, we're counting up 2021, 22, 23, right? But here we also explore the qualitative nature of time. If you think of a river, sometimes there are rapids and things are moving quickly. Sometimes it eddies out and gets deeper. Time is just like this. And we all know from experience, there are hours that last for days, and then days that last for minutes, right? And what is this warp and weft of time moving in and out? And so time has qualities as well as quantity. And so this is just a reminder that we are spiraling through space. We think of the solar system as like a flat disk usually, right? Sun in the center and everything sort of orbiting around it. But it's important to remember that the sun itself is also zooming through space. And so that's what this picture on the right is the sun zooming through space and everything orbiting around it and creating this spiral behind it that looks a lot like a complex DNA coil, if you ask me, right? So we're zooming and everything's going and it's creating this vortex behind it. And then I really like this image on the left where it's like that center point where all those things meet, that flat plane is the present moment. And in that present moment, we can move through space, got sort of, X and Y axes, but then there's time on this Z axis, and there's a light cone in front of us and a light cone out behind us. And this is our navigation through space. And there's a bunch of, I really strongly recommend this book, The Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli. And he goes, it's very sort of accessible, but also amazing modern physics about what is time from a sort of quantum physics perspective. And they literally shape time like an hourglass, like this shape of the two cones meeting at a point. That's the physical shape that they give to, that they show for time. So
What's the last name?
Rovelli, Rovelli. The Order of Time. Wonderful, wonderful books and blowing my mind. Yeah, time is both linear and cyclical, right? So it is correct. And we can count year 1, 2, 3, 4, and it is linear and directional, but it's also cyclical. Spring comes back every year. We do go, the day is a regular cycle. And so every day is the same and it's different. And so recognize that we have both of those types of time, and the way our minds work and orient to reality, if we're thinking in linear time, is way different than if we're thinking in cyclical time. One is not right or wrong, better or worse. They're just a pair that create reality, and we can actually code switch and go back and forth depending on what sort of activity we're doing, and mostly what we want is the tools available. We want as many tools as possible. So, for this job I need a hammer, for this I need a saw. So, okay. Okay. How many people have like a passing familiarity with astrology? Yeah, like you know like what most of the signs of the zodiac are, that sort of thing. So I have a question for you. Why do we give such prominence to the specific 12 constellations of the zodiac? If you look in the night sky, there's stars in every direction, right? A full sphere of stars. No matter where we look from Earth out into space, there are stars. But why just these 12 constellations? Why do we pay so much attention to them? It's a really good question. I take this very seriously. No, that's terrible. I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, but like at what point in human history were not all the stars observable, right? And so there are ebbs and flows of which stars are visible, and there are lots of cycles associated with Sirius. But okay, we're gonna get into the astronomy of astrology here. And so at the top there we see the solar system. The planets are basically distributed on a flat plane, on a horizontal plane, right? There's if you're looking at the sun, that side view, there's a 7-degree window, right? 7-degree deviation from so if you put a line straight through the middle of the sun out to the edge of the solar system, it's only within 3.5 degrees above, 3.5 degrees below that line, 7-degree portion that the planets go up or down. And so then we look at that image on the bottom right, where you can see, okay, that's the town of Vrindavan. And you're standing in Vrindavan, and there's this ring that goes like, and so there's this strip, this 7-degree wide strip of the sky through which all of the planets move. And you will never see a planet, the sun or moon, anything outside that 7-degree strip. And so the signs of the zodiac are the stars within that strip.
Seriously, what?
Does that make sense?
So there's like you're saying strip with
Band. That's
there's a band around Earth.
Yeah.
And then all along the circumference of the band is made up of the zodiac signs. So kind of in this only in that
Yeah.
band.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why.
Yeah. And of course there are stars outside that band.
Yeah.
But the planets will never be, the planets will never be in front of those stars. And so we give specific prominence to like, hey, these stars are hosting the planet. As in
sunrise to sundown, those particular stars.
Yeah. And the sun's always in that arc. And of course the planet, and so this is that lower left, right? We're tilted 23.5 degrees to the side. And then so if you're in the northern hemisphere, that band is not directly overhead, it's sort of in the south and tilted a little bit, right? So it's not like, it's usually not directly overhead, it's sort of like that way. And so that's where you can see this image is well drawn. It gives that sort of that arc. Yeah? Okay. Just a moment to give credit to my teacher, Freedom Cole, for these images. He's a genius, and I am grateful to study with him. So, okay, this is why we pay attention to these particular signs of the zodiac, and we're gonna come back to this image a little bit later.
So like when you hear like Mercury is in Scorpio right now, that's because like literally the planet happens to be traversing that constellation.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so there is a difference between Western and Vedic astrology. And so the difference is that in Vedic astrology, we use the sidereal zodiac, which that word sidereal just means stars, basically. And so the sidereal system is very precise in its measurements about like, there's Mercury, there's Scorpio, that's where it is. The Western system is a little bit less precise in that way because they're measuring, it's a seasonal thing. They're measuring fixed points in the sky. And so I like to bug my Western astrology friends all the time. We're like, oh, you know, Saturn just changed signs, and I'll send them like, you know, you got these great. I got this great app on my phone that's actually like the sky guide, and it will show. And I'll literally take a photo of like, oh, did Saturn just change signs? Here it is, like literally like in the sky with this background of stars, and so this is yeah. It's yeah, define real. No, and so it's not wrong. It's just measuring something different. And but the way my mind works is it's much more satisfying. You're like, no, look, like that's the thing that's actually happening. If we're studying light, if we're trying to get a sense of how light is changing as time moves through space, I want to know what those are the lights. What is their relationship to one another actually? Yeah.
Let's see if I can.
Yeah.
But isn't it just how far off is it?
24 degrees.
In daytime.
Yeah. Oh, in date, that is, it's almost a month.
How far off is what? Like we're ahead of it? Because I've always been like, hey, I think I've been getting my like Mercury retrograde. I think it's early. Is that?
Well, retrogrades are the same. So like the actual movement of the date that Mercury goes retrograde will be the same, but we typically disagree about what sign it's in when it goes retrograde. Okay. The difference between Western Vedic is a whole other class, and I will send you a video. I did a 30-minute video. That's a detailed breakdown of the difference between the systems, and so I'll send that. I'll send that to you as well. So let's just pretend that Vedic is the only thing that's convenient. So we looked at this image for Ayurveda yesterday with elements, doshas, and gunas. The same dynamic works in astrology, where we have planets as the sort of the energies, the basic ingredients that are feeding, that are sort of powering the whole thing. So the planets going into the prism, which is the filter. And the filter, we can say, are the signs. So the force, the energy, the light of the planets hits the filter of the signs and then shows up in, sort of gives results in the rainbow of experience in the houses. So these are the three main ingredients that we're using in any astrology chart: planets, signs, houses. And one of the ways we can think about this is the planets are like characters in a play. You've got the king and the queen, you've got the jester, you've got the warrior, you've got the court scribe, you've got all the different characters in the play. You've got the high magistrate and all these people. And then they, throughout the play that is life, they go through different scenes. And those are the signs. So whether the king is on his throne or alone in the marketplace without his crown negotiating for the price of bread, same character, but very different behavior, very different energies, very different amounts of power and influence. And so that's planets and signs, characters in scenes. And then the houses is about the specifics. Okay, so let's say you've got the king alone in the marketplace without his bodyguards, but then, and so that's got a certain energetic signature to it, right? But where in your life does that show up? Does that show up in your relationships? Does that show up with your family? Does that show up in your career? Does that show up in relation with your pets? So does it show up in relationship with your spiritual values and your sense of purpose in life? And so that's what the houses show, is the specific. Okay, there's this energy, the king in the marketplace, that's got its own vibe. But then, okay, that shows up for me in my inner monologue, in my relationship with myself. Okay, that's way different than if it shows up in relationship to my partner or my boss. Make sense? So this is the essence of what we're looking at when we're doing astrology. the most succinct intro to astrology that I can come up with, is this pyramid thing. Okay, so our most powerful reference point for the passing of time is the sun. The daily rhythms, circadian rhythms, are the most consistent and accessible. We have the attention span to track that, right? So the cycles of light and dark on a daily basis tell us so much. So the days of the week, these are considered solar phenomenon. Our familiar Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday are considered the solar days. And it's really interesting that throughout history, the 7-day week has been pretty consistent across cultures, across time. Most places agree that there's this division of 7, and 7 is a really interesting number. There are 7 days of the week, 7 notes in an octave before you get back. You do C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then you're back to C. There's 7 notes in a musical scale. There's 7 colors in the light spectrum, the rainbow. Ayurveda identifies 7 dhatus, 7 tissues of the body. What else? There's just had another one. Chakras, absolutely. Yeah, 7 chakras. So this number 7, there's something about dividing reality into 7. And then, of course, we have 7 planets that we can see with the naked eye, including the sun and moon, and then Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, sun, moon. 7 planets, that 7 prominent beings of light floating through the sky that we can track. So there are 7 days of the week, and we call them Vara, V-A, long A, R-A. This is the Vada. And we can see that in the Romance languages, it's really easy to see that the days are named after planets, right? Domingo, lunes, martes, miércoles, Mercury. It's Mercury Day. And so it, the Norse Germanic mythology is a little bit less popular, but that's where the Gregorian calendar gets its day names from. So, what planet rules Sunday? And Moon Day, we got Monday. And so in my opinion, those 2 days should be the weekend.
Yes.
Should just change everything. And then Tuesday, that T-I-W, is the Germanic god of war, which is Mars. Mars is that warrior, that forceful, fiery, explosive energy. Then, miércoles, mercredi, Wednesday, Woden is the equivalent. And we also got Hermes as the Greek. Is the one who can pass through all the realms with ease. Underworld, heavenly realm, middle world, just flies through. He's the messenger. He can get messages from the gods to the demons to the humans, and he just zips around quick like that. So partly, Mercury moves really fast around the sun, does a lap every 87 days or something. That's also why we use mercury in thermometers, because mercury is very sensitive to heat. It will change states really easily, go from liquid to gas, really with very minute changes in temperature. So it literally, the metal mercury is changing states really, really quickly, going through the different realms. So Mercury, Wednesday. Thursday, Thor's Day. Thor being equivalent to Jove. Jupiter is the sort of the Zeus character, the largest planet in the solar system, the great benefic, generous guru figure who's just sort of like, wants to just give boons and be generous and dispense wisdom. This is Jupiter. Boons. A boon is like, so in all the Vedic literature, people who pray really hard and do all the right ceremonies, and they're such fervent worshipers, then like Lord Shiva comes down and offers them a boon and says, what, like, your prayers are answered. What would you have me do? And that's a boon. Sorry?
A wish.
A wish. Yeah. And it's got the quality of like a gift. And yeah. No, it's a great word. And then Friday, Freya is the equivalent of Aphrodite. It's goddess Lakshmi. It's the feminine. She's the princess or the seductress or the lover. And Friday, everybody knows what Fridays are like. And if we want to get all pretty and go dancing and find a lover. And it's just everybody loves Fridays, right? Thank God it's Friday. And everybody loves Lakshmi. Lakshmi is all of this, just like what feels good, just like chocolate and silk pillows and sex and just all the sensual realities of wow. Is it too much? Okay, sorry. Yeah. Well, and don't worry, because then comes Saturn's Day, and really, after we're having fun, everything feels good, life is beautiful. Saturn comes, and you're gonna die one day. Think about that, and it's just Saturn is very serious, and Saturn is the planet of time. And the opposite of the sun in so many ways. The sun sits at the center of the solar system and radiates life out. Saturn is the most distant planet that we can see with the naked eye and is therefore like the limitation of light. Saturn is the one who makes us aware of our limitations. Limited time, limited energy, limited intelligence, limited money, limited all of the limits that we have is the awareness of Saturn. And you may be familiar with the concept of a Saturn return. Right, so it takes Saturn 29 years to do a full lap of the zodiac. And so when we turn 28, 29 years old, Saturn is coming back to where it was when we were born. And all of a sudden, our 20s are over and we're aware of our mortality and we better get serious. And all of a sudden, it's like, I'm not invincible. I'm going to die one day. I better go back to school. I better marry this person or break up with this person. And we see people, our sort of 30-year-olds going through these major transformations. And so that's Saturn coming around and giving. Saturn is the awareness of sort of the limits of longevity. So it's this long-term thing that creates urgency right now. It's the awareness that, okay, I have limited time to do my life's purpose, which is like a big long-term goal. So I better get busy right now doing something about it. Is that sensing some recognition there? Yeah.
Turning 29.
Yeah, what a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Yeah.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
And then Saturn comes with right?
Late 50s. Yeah.
Midlife crisis time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, 58, 60 years old, you see people, like retiring. And really we can divide our lives into thirds, right? Our first 30 years where we're kids and we're, doing whatever we want and just learning. We're not really taking life that seriously. Then Saturn comes back around and is like, hey, you incarnated for this particular purpose. And one of Saturn's main motivation is to help us work through as much karma as possible as we can in this lifetime. Mostly that feels like punishment. Mostly the Sanskrit texts call Saturn the grief giver. And it's really like Saturn comes around and we suffer, but we're a better person because of it. Like Venus and Saturn were arguing one time, and they went to Lord Vishnu to ask, Lord Vishnu, which one of us is most beautiful? And Vishnu thinks, yes. Well, Venus, you are most beautiful when you're walking towards me. Saturn, you're most beautiful when you're walking away. And Venus, like, hey, Venus, come over here. Oh, yeah, okay. How comes death approaching? Cool, man. Like, but when Saturn's leaving, it's like, I just suffered for 2 years, but I am a much better person because of it. I'm more mature. I have a sense of reality and more like when Saturn's leaving, it's like when we go through difficult experiences and it's terrible, but then, you know, a year or 10 years later, we look back, it's like, oh, that's what made me who I am. Those really challenging things. That's Saturn. That's why we want to see Saturn walking away. Oh, thanks for coming. Bye. Yeah. So that's our week. And again, we can spend a lot of time going into what to do on what days, how to schedule travel, your meetings, all these sorts of things. But we're moving on. And I just want to show you this because this understanding every hour of the week is ruled by a planet. And this is a solar rulership, right? So when you're doing, it's mostly about outward activity. And really this map of time is helpful for when to perform rituals and ceremonies. So again, it's outward, like working with the light that's bouncing around that we perceive as reality. It's like, okay, if my karma is broken in some way in relation to the moon, and I need to do something to sort of honor the moon and like build up some good karma in that realm, then Monday at 6 a.m. is a great time to do something nice for my mother, or, you know, there's a bunch of very specific remedies to honor the moon. And so there's all these vast books of different rituals, and it's sort of like tantric. The Vedic priests know the different prayers and the different pujas and fire ceremonies for different things, which is all great, but when do you do it? To which deity do you in particular do it, right? Like, cool, there's 1,000 prayers you could do, but for me, and so this is where the chart and the timing comes in, so it's great to know how to do it, but what to do and when is this whole science of astrology. Yeah? Okay. A little bit of vocabulary here, different rhythms. And most of us are familiar with the idea of a circadian rhythm. Circa dia, around a day, right? The circle of a day, circadian rhythms is about 24 hours. But then we've got infradian cycles, which is any period that's longer than day. So examples include menstrual cycles, breeding, migration, hibernation, fur or hair growth, the tides, seasonal rhythms, so like seasonal affective disorder, that sort of thing. So basically any regular cycle or rhythm that's longer than a day, we can categorize as infradian. And then ultradian is a period of less than 1 day. So all the this last thing that we looked at is a form of infradian, right? So within the day, okay, this is Mars, this is Venus. There's a difference, and we can organize our time within the day. So just that vocabulary is helpful to understand that yes, there's a circadian rhythm, but then there's larger cycles, smaller cycles. Just basic vocabulary for us. This is an infradian cycle, a month, movements of the moon. And so this is, again, just a little bit of astronomy on the right-hand side to understand that when the moon is new, it's directly aligned with the sun. So it's rising and setting with the sun. And so when it's a new moon and the night sky is dark, it's not because the moon is there, but there's no light shining on it. The moon is literally on the other side of the planet, right? It's with the sun, so exactly 180 degrees away from our night sky, where it's daytime in China, is where the moon is. And so we can't see it for about 3 days because we don't want to stare directly into the sun, and it's blocked that way, right? And then during a full moon, it's exactly opposite, right? So the moon is on the opposite side of the planet from the sun. So you can see this when it's around the full moon, you see the sun set and the moon rise in west and east. And then opposite, if you're up at sunrise, you'll see the moon set in the west. And there's some beautiful moments when you can see the sun and the moon at the same time. It's really, really special times. And so that takes about 30 days. So we're going to talk about the different types of month that we can measure, because there are lots of different months that we can measure. We're going to talk about 3 of them. And just to, again, go through the astronomy of it a little bit, the moon moves about 13 degrees and 20 minutes every day relative to the stars. So again, from our perspective on Earth, relative to the stars of the zodiac, the moon moves a little more than 13 degrees. But the sun moves about 1 degree per day. And so, it's like 13 minus 1. And so relative to the sun, the moon moves 12 degrees per day. And so if the moon goes 12 degrees per day, excuse me, and one of the months we can measure is the moon doing 360 degrees in the sky. 360 degrees divided by 12 degrees is 30. That's our 30-day month. Right? Make sense? Math. Again, like, I wish I did not like geometry class in high school or algebra or anything like that. But if they'd have done this and taught me math that actually is like relevant. Anyway. Let's see. Yeah, just some facts about the movement of the moon here. It takes about 2.5 days for the moon to go through one sign. Again, one sign is 30 degrees. 12 signs in the zodiac times 30 degrees, 360-degree belt around us. And so if the moon is moving 13 degrees per day, it's like a little bit less than 2.5 days in each sign. So the moon is moving really quickly. Every third day, the moon's in a new sign. Okay, I think that's, and then, yeah, moonrise changes by about 48 minutes every night. I was on a group, we were on a vision quest out in the desert recently, and all my friends were like, they're so excited to like track the moon. They're so connected to the moon. The moon was full while we were there. It's like this very big experience for them. But then, from one night to the next, like, I went to look for the moon and it like wasn't there. They're like, what's happening? And I was like, well, it just rose almost an hour later than it was the night before. And so so if you think of from new moon to full moon is 2 weeks. And so that's 180 degrees that the moon has to move in relationship to the sun. And so it's 12 hours, right? It's got 2 weeks to make up 12 hours to, like, so sunrise and sunset is about 12 hours apart, right? So if the moon's going to rise with the sun during a new moon and the opposite during a full moon, it's got to make up that 12 hours. It's got to get 12 hours away from the sun in 2 weeks. It's like almost an hour a day changing. Yeah? Astronomy. Okay, 3 types of month. We got solar, sidereal, and synodic. A solar month is the amount of time it takes the sun to go through one sign. And so the Western astrology is sun sign astrology. We usually think, oh yeah, March 21st starts Aries season and so on from there. Right? On March 20th, 21st, the sun rises. If you look at where it actually is in the sky relative to the stars, it's at about 6 degrees of Pisces. And so it's moved 24 degrees away from Aries over the course of thousands of years. And so anyway, traditionally the Vedic solar calendar starts when the sun enters Aries, which is sometime in April these days, late April. And because the Earth's orbit is not a perfect circle, but it's oblong, right? Nothing's quite perfect. The speed at which we orbit varies, right? Because if we come through the short part of the oblong, we're going a little bit faster. Going on the long part, it's a little bit slower. Zoom, zoom, sort of that rhythm. So a solar month is either 29, 30, or 31 days because of this variation. And we say it's a variation in the speed of the sun's orbit, but and that's just helpful for shorthand, because again, from our perspective on Earth, the sun is one of the planets moving through that ring, but it's always helpful to keep in mind the actual astronomical reality that, you know, the sun is not rising, the Earth is turning towards it. The sun is not setting, the Earth is turning away from it. It's a really fun exercise. If you're actually watching a sunrise or sunset, see if you can like zoom out and see the Earth turning. It's not the sun moving, it's the Earth moving. Yeah, fun. Yeah, so 30 degrees. It's the sun's location relative to the stars of the zodiac. A sidereal month is the amount of time it takes for the moon to go 360 degrees around the zodiac. So measuring from any point, you know, where's the moon today? And then how long does it take it to get back to this point, 360-degree circle? And so that takes the moon 27 days, 7 hours, and 43 minutes to go 360 degrees. Again, if you do the math, it's, you know, it's about 13 degrees per day. But again, there's these little variances as well. Time is messy. That's one of the things that, like, there's all these precise calculations, and it's just messy. It's why there's no universal calendrical system, is because a year is 365.2422 days long. That's a messy number. Wouldn't it be nice if it was just 360 days? And, you know, a day, depending on what kind of day you're measuring, is 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 7 seconds. Wouldn't it be nice if 360 days of exactly 24 hours and, you know, 12 months of exactly 30 days? It would be so clean and satisfying, geometrically perfect, but it's not. It's just not. It's messy. Again, moon's location relative to the fixed stars. And then a synodic month is from new moon to new moon. and we'll look at why this is a little bit longer, right? It takes the moon a little bit longer to go 360 degrees and then catch up with the sun again, because the sun's been moving in that time as well. And so let's look at that right now. I want to show you how the movements of the sun and moon are actually a cosmic clock. This is the astronomy of time right here. Is that moving? Yeah, it is. So you can see, you know, moon, 2.5 days in each sign, and it's going around. And as it's going around, the sun is moving 1 degree per day, and it gets around. And okay, now it's back. That's a sidereal month. Now it's at a synodic month. Whoa. Easy now. Okay, so it came all the way back around. So back this up. So that would be our sidereal month, right? The moon went all the way around 360 degrees back to where it started. But in that time, the sun went almost all the way through, you know, it went 28 degrees. It's going about 1 degree per day, and it takes the moon about 28 days to do 360 degrees. Okay, then the sun moved 28 degrees. And so it's going to take the moon another 2 or a little bit more than 2 days to catch up. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, stop. You're impressed with that size? Oh, thank you.
That's like slide.
Yeah. Mostly it's the attempt to like explain and visualize it for myself, and then luckily it's helpful. It's helpful. Yeah. Cool. Thanks. So, okay, this is our. I couldn't figure that out. It just keeps moving. We got to back up into it. So this is our sidereal month. From the new moon, where they're both together there between Aries and Taurus, because it's 12 noon, to the moon getting back to where it was, 360 degrees. That's our sidereal month. And then here is our synodic month, where from new moon to new moon, where the sun and moon are in syzygy, one of my favorite words in the world, syzygy, S-Y-Z-Y-G-Y. And it means the alignment of 3 or more concepts or objects. It's mostly used to talk about cosmic bodies, sun, moon, and earth in a new moon or full moon is the thing. Syzygy. Okay. Yes.
It's a third grade question.
Perfect.
Is the moon behind the sun, or is the sun behind the moon? When We see a little different faces.
So astronomically, which one is closer? Moon. Moon's much closer, right? So the sun is behind the moon. If ever you can see them both.
It's a full moon, the sun is right behind it, and that's why we see all this light.
When it's a full moon, say it's midnight and you see the full moon overhead, the sun is exactly on the opposite side of the planet from where we are. And so the moon is at a 5-degree tilt out of the perfect plane. Because otherwise, if it wasn't at that tilt, otherwise every month would be an eclipse. Because if they were perfectly aligned and the sun is over here, we're on Earth in between the sun and moon. And so when an eclipse happens, the light from the sun is shining, the Earth blocks it, and then we see the shadow of the Earth on the moon. Yeah. And then that's a lunar eclipse. A solar eclipse is always a new moon when from our perspective, we're looking towards the sun and the path of the moon goes between us and the sun. And it just happens to cross over. And it's one of the sort of anomalous, it's a very mysterious thing. Like, why is the moon, which is a very different size than the sun, but from our perspective on Earth, they're exactly the same size. Like the ratios are just right. That the size of the sun at that distance is exactly the same as the size of the moon at the distance that it's at. It's like, who did that? Like, how did it get that way? Almost like it was man-made, which is we're not going to go there. Yeah. But I hear you. And actually the ratio it's got something to do with the number 108. It's like there's something about the what is it? The distance from, it's got to do with the diameter and the distance. It's like the diameter of the Earth times 108 is the diameter of the sun. There's a bunch, like 108 is the common multiple. It's like the diameter of the moon and its distance, the diameter of the sun and its distance. Again, like, isn't that, so we only ever see the one side of the moon, right? It's like if you had a bowling ball in like a little satchel and a string, basically you get a bowling ball at the edge of a string and just like spun around in circles, like the same, it's orbiting, but you would always see the same side of the bowling ball with it. Yeah. So the bowling ball is rotating, but it's rotating at exactly the same speed that we're turning. And so that's why we only ever see one side of the moon.
So we're looking at the
What's
same
on the
page.
other side?
We must know.
Go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Do we know what's on the other side?
Yeah.
What it looks like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we got lots of crafts out there. And Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd lives there. Okay. We're a couple minutes behind pace, and so I'm just gonna keep chugging ahead here, because all the juicy stuff is right at the end, obviously. So okay, this is a way to understand the synodic month from new moon to new moon, and again, this is not something that's from any text. This is something I made up, basically. This division of the lunar cycle into, what's really important, that like, because there's so much Vedic wisdom. There's so many like scientific things they know so much, and this is not that. But it's really, really helpful to me to understand the energies of the different phases of the moon. And dividing it into 6, we can align it with all of these other observable things in nature, whether it's a human lifespan, the different times of day, the ebb and flow of a plant life cycle, or the seasons. And so we talked about the 6 seasons in Ayurvedic terms yesterday. And so it's this is how I understand the moon cycles. And so it's much easier where if I say, oh, it's the waning crescent moon, like to most people that doesn't, like, what? Like even if you can visualize that, oh, that means it's a tiny little crescent and it's getting smaller. What does that mean? What's the energetic of that? But if I tell you, oh, the waning crescent is associated with winter and evening time and the elder time of life, and when a plant goes to seed, you understand, like, you know what it's like to be an elder, getting ready for that transition from this world into the next, and how much energy does an elder have versus an adolescent, and so understanding these different sort of parallels can be really helpful to understanding what are the appropriate actions and activities, and how might my emotional body be shifting during this time of the month, as opposed to this other phase. And so, quick aside, I send a free newsletter to anybody who wants it every 2 weeks on the new and full moon with sort of like astrological weather report. Tomorrow, I'm starting to launch a newsletter. It's going to go out every 5 days. That's marking these phase shifts, and so it's got deep detail about every single day, energetic signatures, suggested activities, these sorts of things, and so that's going out. It's going to start tomorrow, so I'm all excited about it. I've been doing a bunch of stuff behind the scenes, so I just wanted to mention that if you want to track these cycles, all this data that's available for each day, I have an access point for that for you. Okay, so getting down into, so this is the ebb and flow throughout the month. And then each day of the lunar cycle also has its own unique energetic signature and is ruled by an element and has different qualities. And so you can see the new moon is there at the bottom, the full moon is there at the top of this colored wheel. And basically, green is a generative day, a good day to go out and do and ask for. The red days are red day. It'll go better. If you're gonna, got to take out the trash, metaphorically speaking, like whatever needs to be broken down. This is also part of the creative process, is to break things down, right? So those are what the red days are for. And then the yellow days, it depends. Mixed results. You could do this, you could do that. Depends on other factors. Depends what day of the week it is. Depends where the planets are. All these other things. No such thing as a good or bad day. Just a spectrum of moods. They're different qualities. One of the things with Ayurveda and astrology, this whole realm, basically taking good and bad out of the vocabulary. Nothing is good or bad. Some things may be preferable, but it's just about describing the qualities of the energetics. Where even a bad day, it's a red day and everything's getting broken down. It's like, hey, cool, we can run with that. And if we know that there are rapids coming in the river, they don't have to upturn our canoe. That could be the most fun part of the whole trip. But it's just about knowing, hey, here are the rapids. Let's stay right, because we'll just go down, we'll shoot, as opposed to going off the waterfall. That's the benefit of using this, studying the way light changes as time moves through space, is just to recognize, oh, this is that moment. And so often when people come and have an appointment and everything's falling apart, it's really validating, because I'll see oh yeah, everything's falling apart right now, isn't it? It's perfectly appropriate. Oh yeah, it's chaotic. You're right on time. It's supposed to be chaotic right now. This is how we evolve, through alternating bouts of chaos and order. So yes, that. So yeah, each day of the cycle is ruled by a different element, gives certain indications, supports certain activities, and so that's what we call tipis. The day of the lunar cycle is called a tipi. So we've got Vara, different types of days, right? The Vara is the solar day, the day of the week. The tipi is the lunar day, the day, which day in the lunar cycle is it? And then we've got nakshatras. Now, a nakshatra, if we Okay, so we're here on Earth. We got our solar system. We've got the ring of stars that we know as the zodiac, right? That move through that 7-degree band of the sky. So that's a circle around us. There is a next concentric circle of stars more distant than the familiar constellations of the zodiac. We call these nakshatras. And this is one of the defining features of Vedic astrology is the working with the nakshatras. And there are about 13 degrees and 20 minutes, which if you remember is the distance the moon travels in a day. So basically the moon is in a new nakshatra every single day. And they have their own mythologies, their own deities, their own stories and animal indicators. And the nakshatras are a whole deep science in and of themselves. And actually we can say that, we can understand the nakshatras subdivide the signs. And so, you can, I'm sure, like just for example, we all know a Leo person. Maybe 2 or 3 Leo people, and they're similar but also different. And so it's hard to just group everybody into only 12 different things. And so the nakshatras give us, well, you're Leo, but there's a big difference between Magha and Uttara Falguni, for example, right? These different nakshatras. So, but we can actually say that the signs, like the nakshatras are actually primary. And the signs are local emanations of those energies. So that's the way Vedic astrology really looks at it, is nakshatras first, and then the signs are the local expressions of in a more general way. Okay, so those 3 ingredients, the Vada, the Tithi, and the nakshatra, give us the energetic anatomy of any given day. And again, we're back to this pyramid thing, right? Where the Vada, the solar energy, the light, or the life force of the day is that white light going into the prism. The Tithi, which day of the lunar cycle it is the filter, sort of the mode of creation. Which element is most active? Is it an earth day or a fire day? Very, very different types of creation going to happen on those days. And so it may be Wednesday, so it's a Mercury day, but Mercury as a character behaves very different in relation to fire or water or earth, right? So same character, but are they doing pottery or painting? Different results. And then the results, the expression or the mood or the quality of the day is given by the nakshatra. And so these 3 ingredients are the most important aspect or energies to understand to pick a day. Should I be traveling today or staying home? Should I ask for a raise or quit? Should I, if you're going to do something important, if you're going to buy a house, if you're going to start a company, you want to understand the qualities of a day. Again, not that anything is better or worse, but you want to choose for the thing that you're trying to do. Again, if you're going to break up with someone, don't do it on a generative day where everything's light and happy and you're likely to fall back in love with this problematic person. Do it on a Saturday, on a day with harsh results, on a red tithi, and align it so that the cord will just snap of its own accord. You don't have to struggle upstream. Again, you can ride the rapids down as opposed to having to paddle upstream against the tide. Yeah. So again, this energetic anatomy of a Vedic day is the main focus of this phase shift newsletter. It's like I'm giving you the ingredients every single day. Like here's all the elements, here's all the things that play, and here's my 3-sentence summary of things to look at. Okay, we're back to this. I don't think we need to say anything more about that. Okay, so this is, from our perspective on Earth, this is what's happening. We've got this band of signs, this band of stars through which the planets are moving. So signs and planets always moving because Earth is turning, so they're always moving through the sky. But there are also these fixed points, and these are the houses. The houses are fixed because there's always something on the eastern horizon. There's always something rising on the eastern horizon. There's always something setting on the eastern horizon. So what is there always changes. But the there that's there is always there, right?
It's like, there's always like in that image, there's the space of the rectangle and then the next half of that rectangle, rectangles and halves.
Correct. The structure is there, the content changes. And so there's always something directly overhead, something directly underfoot, rising in the east, setting in the west. There's always something there. And those structures are what we call the houses. And so the houses are our key for the astrological day. And so those of you who were here yesterday saw this same chart, but with just about the Pitta and Kapha on it. And so the houses give us another subdivision of the day. So the doshas divide the day into 4-hour chunks. The houses divide the day into 2-hour chunks. And so we got 12 houses, 24 hours in a day. 24 divided by 12 is 2. We got 2-hour portions of the day that are in each house. And the houses, again, are the areas of life. So, we've got relationships, we've got self-care, we've got our jobs, we've got all these different areas of life that in the chart, if the sun in the 10th house is, the king having a strong career, whereas the sun in the 4th house is more about like home. So we're going to talk about that. But throughout the day, there's time to do every part of life. We need to take care of our relationships, our bodies, our work in the world. Every single day, there's a period of time sort of indicated to do that activity. So that's what we're going to get into here. And so just to orient what we're looking at in this graph, on the left-hand side, your left, the left-hand side, that side between the 1st and 12th house is the eastern horizon. And so the 1st house is really the couple hours before sunrise. And it's really what is rising on the eastern horizon. What's just coming above is that 1st house. But then, and so we can think of the sun moves through all 12 houses every day. So that's, we can follow the sun. So at sunrise, the sun is moving into the 12th house. And it goes around from there and counts backwards, 12, 11, 10, until, the 7th house, the sun is setting, 6th house, it's gone below the horizon. And then the 4th house, the sun is on the opposite side of the planet. It's the middle of the night. It's exactly opposite. Whereas 10th house is directly overhead. Is that making sense with what is represented here? Okay. So one of the things that I want to note before we go any further is this waking rest activity cycle. It's also known as the basic rest activity cycle. These psychologists in the 60s started figuring this out. It's sort of the beginning of what's known as chronobiology. And it's the science of circadian rhythms. The 2017 Nobel Prize in medicine was given to this group that figured out the chemical mechanism by which circadian rhythms operate. And so really, really cool science. And there's a bunch of research. And this is really our sleep cycles on some level, right? We're in deep rest for 90 minutes. And then we go into REM sleep, which is sort of a period of activity for 20 minutes. And this is the ebb and flow of sleep. But when we're awake, it's the opposite. We're still in this sort of 90-minute, 20 thing, but it's like 90 minutes of activity, attention, and a 20-minute break. And where we get into trouble is when we're just trying to do 8 hours of nonstop activity and we burn ourselves out. So there's this appropriate ebb and flow in and out, 90 minutes. I mean, how long are most Hollywood movies? 90 minutes, because there's science that our brains can't actually focus much longer than that in a general way. Like there's actually, depending on what scale you're at, like 8 seconds is actually about the longest that most humans can actually focus on something. 3 minutes is another sort of intermediary marker. But in a general way, 90 minutes is like, as a whole being, how long can we focus our attention and energy on a thing? Any more than 90 minutes and we're depleting ourselves. And so what I would suggest to you, and this is the main sort of time management practice that I use using astrology, and how I organize my day is 90-minute portions of focused activity, during whatever house it is. So as the day moves through these 2-hour portions, there's 12 houses. Okay, 10th house, it's time to focus on career stuff. So 90 minutes of really focused work with a 15-minute intro and outro, right? 15 minutes at the beginning, 15 minutes at the end, with 90 minutes in the middle is my 2-hour period. Yeah.
What is an intro and outro look like?
Sometimes it's like just like organizing my desk, cleaning up, just getting settled. Sometimes,
Jumping into it.
right. And sometimes it means driving from one place to the next. So it's transition time. And if you follow it throughout the day, it's actually 90 minutes of time and attention with a 30-minute break, right? Because you got 15 minutes at the beginning, 15 minutes at the end, 15 minutes at the beginning. So there's actually 30 minutes of transition out of one into the next. And what I've found is this creates so much spaciousness in the day where I'm not rushing from one to the next. And if I'm in the middle of one thing, if I'm in the middle of that 90-minute period, and I start to get distracted or stressed, or I'm bored, I don't want to do this anymore, it's like, hey, I've only got 40 minutes left, and this is the time of day to do this thing. So it just is this psychological structure, like, cool, I can do this for another 40 minutes. Or like, oh, I've only got 20 minutes left. It's cool. Let's just, and then it's like, I get this surge of fresh motivation. It's like, oh, there's this the limitation is actually empowering. The same way, like the difference between a fluorescent light bulb and a laser is concentration, is density. It's limiting the, fluorescent light just goes everywhere all at once. But if you start to limit it and focus it, you get a laser. And of course, you can't just be burning your laser all day long. That takes too much energy. But for 90 minutes at a time, cool, I'm in here, I'm doing this. And then I know I've got really 30 minutes to, okay, I'm going to transition out of this, make any notes. Oh, I didn't get this done, but I can wait till tomorrow, and wrap up. And then, okay, I'm going to change clothes, which is one of these really important markers for from day to day, or like throughout the day. So changing clothes as soon as I get home from work is such a powerful thing, because it shifts my mind. It's a really strong indicator to my body that something has changed. It's not work time anymore, it's home time. And so I'm more oriented to do the appropriate activities. Lighting a candle is another thing. Costume change. Literally, I'm a different character, different scene.
Yeah.
Costume change. Yeah, totally. And so does this diagram make sense? Is that a sensible way to organize things? And again, if you have control over your schedule, if you can schedule meetings, if you can schedule appointments in your own way, think about this and use this map of time where you may have to have an appointment in the afternoon, but then knowing like, okay, afternoon is supportive of this type of meeting as opposed to first thing in the morning is supports a different type of meeting. So let's get into that right now and actually talk about the content of the houses. What are the different houses? What do they mean? That sort of thing. Okay. Some more vocabulary for us. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. These are the 4 Purusharthas. Not important that you know that word Purushartha, but these 4 words, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, are considered the 4 aims of life, or the 4 motivations in life. And they really do represent a full creation cycle where Dharma, is anybody familiar with that word Dharma? It's this idea that there's some purpose. This isn't just random. You aren't just here in some chaotic, random, accidental way. Creation is created for some reason. And it may be different for each person, for each being, but it's there. Again, the structure is there. The content may change, but there's this structure that is Dharma, where we're here with some fundamental purpose, some main motivation. And that changes based on which sphere of influence we're looking at. So we can go, let's go vertically first, right? So there are 3 Dharma houses. So, okay, there are 4 categories, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, divided into 3, we can think of them as concentric spheres. Personal, social, universal, right? Myself, my friends, society, the world, the cosmos as a whole, yeah? 3 times 4 is 12. Math. So our 3 Dharma houses, 1, 5, and 9. So this idea, there's purpose. So the individual Dharma house is the first house. That's your rising sign, your ascendant. And so this is, why are you here? You are a human in a body for some reason. And so astrologically, that first house is literally your physical body, but it's also this driving force. This Vedic astrology is very focused on the ascendant. It's like the first thing we look at, because that sets the template for everything else that's going to happen. And it really is, you know, I may have wanted to be a professional basketball player, but I just don't, there was just no way that's ever going to happen because of how I incarnated. And so that sets the template for what else is possible. What is my true purpose here? And so that first Dharma house, why was I created? Why did I create myself in this way? The social expression of Dharma is you want to create something with others in the world. I want to start a business. I want to make a baby. I want to, you know, like, there's all this stuff. We've sort of like, it's not just about me and my purpose. It's like, well, there's other people here. There's this whole world around me. I can create something. And so, yeah, it's about, but what do you want to create? Why do you want to create something? What is it in the world that you want to make? There's some purpose that you want to create something for. So that's your sort of social Dharma. That's the 5th house. We're going to do another lap. Okay. So, and then that 9th house, that universal Dharma, that's the realm like religion and spirituality. It's this idea like there's some reason that all of this is here. It's not just me, it's not just my friends. There's this whole cosmos, and what's the why behind the whole cosmos? This is where we get into our deeply held beliefs, faith, philosophy, religion. It's this idea that everything is changing, but there's some unchanging firmament from which all the changing things arise and which they change back into. And like, what is that? What is that unchanging realm? And everybody can, again, content changes. Everybody's got lots of different ideas about what that is, but everybody has some relationship to that. Even if, you know, oh, I'm an atheist. Okay, cool. That is what defines your relationship to that unchanging thing, right? Non-belief is a form of belief. Okay, yeah, so just to say, the 5th house, that social creative place, is the place of children, starting a business, dating, not marriage. And it's just like, oh, other people, it's so fun to be had. That was a very creative place. Okay, Artha. Artha is about resources. So if you're born with a purpose, you then, okay, I want to create art. Looked around me and was like, cool, well, there's some clay. Cool, I'll use the clay to create my art. Whereas in a different birth and a different incarnation, I may have been born and there's paint around. Cool, I'll use paint. Okay, I was born in front of a piano. Great, I'll use a piano to make my art. So Artha are the resources that we have available to us, really the value that we have available to us. And so on that individual, in that individual spirit, it's about our family of origin. It's the value that we inherit. So in the chart, we can see like inheritance, family wealth, that sort of thing. But it's also the values that we inherit. What's important? How do you treat people? It's family values. And then how do you speak? That 2nd house has to do with the throat chakra and what goes in our mouth. So it's like food and speech. What goes in, what comes out. And so the chart is also, we can map a human body on the astrology chart as well in different plots. So family wealth, The second tier, the social realm of Artha, is the fact that it takes effort to generate value. And you must be of service to what you love in order to make value. And it's like, if in the 5th house, you are creative, you start a business, you have a baby, in the 6th house, like, great, you love that thing, serve it. You have this purpose, great, change its diaper, do the taxes, clean the toilets. Oh, yeah, does that make sense? Where it's like, to actually generate value, and based on your values, like, my value is to treat people well. Sometimes that's hard and thankless, and you gotta just do stuff that nobody's gonna say thank you for, but it's what needs to be done to actually generate value and to act in alignment with your values. And then on the universal sphere, that 10th house is about career. It's really about public responsibility. If you value these things, what responsibility are you willing to take on in relation to society as a whole? Oh, cool, you believe in this thing? Great, what are you doing about it? My mom yells at me all the time when I'm getting fired up about politics. She's like, well, David, you should run for office. Like, no, I shouldn't. Then shut up, is basically what she's saying. Like, if you're not gonna take responsibility for your beliefs and your values, then what do you really believe in? And so that's really in the astrology chart what your career ought to be. Is you go from that 9th house into that 10th house, cool, you have this idea of what the cosmos is, what's the purpose of the whole cosmos? Great, be responsible for that in relation to all of existence, and that's your career. Artha, value. We've got a purpose, and we've got resources to do something about that purpose with, and then comma. Does anybody recognize that word comma? Comma.
Like comma, like a sentence comma?
No. Kama Sutra. The pleasure sutras. Yeah, kama means pleasure, enjoyment, basically. And I love this because it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. Kama is where we enjoy the fruits of our karma, which can be, accepting an award or a prison sentence. Here, enjoy the fruits of your karma. So on the individual level, it's about ego differentiation. The 3rd house is about siblings, where it's like, okay, your favorite color is blue and my favorite color is red, and that makes us different. And that is, on some level, like, how I know I am me and you are you is based on what we enjoy, what our preferences are. And that differentiation is like, what I like is different than what you like. And so that's what differentiates us. And so that's that 3rd house. And it really is this place where 3rd house cycle of some sort, it's this really strong invitation to be selfish. Literally, it's like watch out for it. You want to be, there's like enlightened selfishness, but it's like, hey, like right now as a focus, like, who are you? There's this idea in yoga that we should just give up the ego and disappear and surrender ourselves, but you need to have a healthy ego. You wouldn't be incarnated as an individual being if you didn't have stuff to learn and projects to do in that way. And so that egoic force is really just the energetic structure that lets every individual cell in your body know that it's part of a larger whole. That's my working definition of the ego. It's just that force that makes all the little parts know that they are part of the whole thing that is me. And where egos get unhealthy is that we forget that the whole thing that is me is also just a part of the larger thing that is society and the living planet. And so the ego in its ideal form is a selectively permeable membrane, right? It's solid enough where I know that I'm me and you're you, and there's a differentiation, but it's not impermeable. Certain things get let in, certain things get let out. But it's not just like, oh, here's my cytoplasm spilling all over you. It's like, no, I'm holding my own energy in my own field. but I'll let some things out. And then you can also influence me in return. I'm not just like, no, I don't care what you say. Oh, okay, I'm hearing you. But I'm not just going to take whatever you say. There's a filter there. You're going to say, yeah.
How do we know which of our houses are?
We gotta look at your chart. And it depends on the rising sign. So every 2 hours, there's a different sign rising on the eastern horizon. And based on what sign is that first house, that sets the template. So everybody who has Aries rising has Libra in the 7th house, and Capricorn in the 10th house, and Cancer is the 4th house. And so that sets the template based on what the rising sign is, and then wherever the planets are, give emphasis, and all those relationships play on. That makes sense? Comma on the social sphere is the 7th house, which first house is rising on the eastern horizon, 7th house setting on the western horizon. So it's literally who you're sitting directly across the table from, which is romantic partnership, basically. It's partnership, long-term committed partnership, which can be a business relationship. It's basically the 7th house is where two equal parties, peer-to-peer, colleague level relationships, both have needs that they can't meet for each other, and they sign a contract to meet those needs for each other. That's a marriage, that's a business partnership. There's all sorts of peer-to-peer relationships. I have these needs I can't meet, you have those needs you can't meet. Let's agree to meet them for each other. That's the 7th house. And again, like social level pleasure are committed relationships. And again, there's like double-edged sword there, isn't it? So because some our greatest pain also comes in that realm usually. And then we've got our social level, our collective universal sphere, which is really like that 11th house is where you collect a paycheck. It's where you have a social reputation. It's where you're at a party and you're either being roasted or awarded, and it's that relationship to society as a whole, and the measure of pleasure that you get out of that. Again, the 11th house is accepting an award from your local Lions Club, and like being shamed at your high school party. It's like same category with different content. Okay, and then moksha. Everybody know what that word moksha means? Liberation, freedom. And this is where we just want to let go of everything. We realize that what we've done is not it, and there's something else. There's a trend. There's an opportunity for transcendence, and so we think of this flow of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha is we've got some purpose, and we've got some resources to accomplish that purpose with. Based on how we do with that, we experience some measure of pleasure, and then we're ready for the next thing, sort of over it. And moksha is like, okay, so someone is born and they want to be an Olympic athlete. They're just driven to accomplish the decathlon, and they're born with the resources to do it. They're good genetics, they've got a good body and the support to do it. Okay, great. Comma, they're on the gold medal stand. They're at the top of the podium. And so cool, that's their comma moment. And then the moksha moment is I'm hungry. Or like it's like I've accomplished the whole thing, and it's still not it. I'm still not enlightened. There's some dissatisfaction still. And so there's another concentric sphere to go. There's another level of transcendence to go to. And so on that individual level, that 4th house is really where we get over ourselves. It's like, cool, like I'm me, I was born into this family and I know who I am, and I like blue, you like red, whatever it is, and that makes me cool. And then that 4th house comes along, it's like, yeah, and like ultimately just being me isn't magic, like fully satisfying. I'm not completely content being just me. But that fourth house does have to do with contentment. It's the fourth house. If we look at, let's go to this side, so we can look at these both at the same time. So the fourth house you see is what's directly underground. So when we're standing on the earth, 10th house is overhead, fourth house is underfoot. It's our root system. And so it's also our psycho-emotional root system. And how do we relate to ourselves? What's our self-regard? Where do we know ourselves to be planted? And so it's got to do with the home we create for ourselves, and where do we plant ourselves? How do we organize our home? But our home is in our head, in our heart. So how do we organize our relationship to ourselves? Is that fourth house? Yeah. So then on the social level, that eighth house, the eighth house is probably the most difficult house. There are three what are called Dushtana houses, 6, 8, and 12 are considered difficult, challenging. And the eighth house is where, you can see this social thing, the social sphere play out, where fifth house is dating and excitement. It's like, oh, you're cute, let's date. This is exciting. I'm interested. I love you so much that I'm going to make the irrational choice to have a baby. Because if I knew how much work it actually took in the sixth house, I probably wouldn't do it. But I'm so enthusiastic that I'm going for it. Sixth house, okay, there's work. Commitment takes effort, and I love this baby, but I'm changing his diapers and feeding it, and it's just throwing food in my hair and peeing in my face, whatever babies do. But the difference between dating and marriage is that work of the sixth house, that commitment. And so we get to that seventh house, like, okay, we have a partnership. We meet each other's needs. And how often Disney broke a lot of our brains, I think, in terms of like, I just need to find a partner and then I'll be satisfied. If I find the right partner, then I'll be happy, then I'll be content, then that'll sort of like complete me. As Shel Silverstein, the missing piece, right? But that doesn't really work that way. And so we get to that partnership level, and then we're standing on the podium or like at the altar. It's like, I'm not fully content. I'm not fully satisfied by this. This isn't everything. It may be wonderful, it may be so many things, but it's not full realization, enlightenment. Life is fundamentally dissatisfying on some level. And that eighth house is where we're aware of the fact that everything's going to change. It's like, cool, you may love this person with all your heart, and you and they are going to die one day. They're going to get sick. Things are going to change. They're going to fall in love with somebody else. You're going to fall in love with somebody else. It's going to change. It's going to break apart. Inevitably. And the eighth house is where we're in touch with that reality. And see, the eighth house in the chart is between 2 and 4 p.m. This is a great time to take a nap. Don't make any major decisions. Don't ask your boss for a raise. Relax. 4 to 6. 4 to 6. And how much sense does that make for like, for me, it makes all the sense in the world. That 4 to 6 p.m. is this most difficult time. It's like where I need a nap, but I've got so much responsibility and I'm trying to get stuff done by the end of the day. And there's traffic, and there's, I got to go to the grocery store and get home, and it's just like it's hectic. That's the eighth house, and then that 12th house, the universal liberation. Doesn't that sound nice? Don't we want to be universally liberated? Okay, then give me all your money. Let me take away all of your loved ones. I'm going to liberate you from your house. I'm going to liberate you from your physical body, even. We all want to be liberated from our suffering and our struggles, but universal liberation requires us that we are liberated from everything. So that 12th house has to do with ashrams and prisons, places where we give up all our worldly possessions, wear orange robes, and do nothing but sit around and think about what we've done. One is voluntary, one is involuntary, of course, but that 12th house is just total transcendence, and it's very abstract. It's the after death state. After death, before birth is the 12th house. So
So Dave, the fact that it's sunrise, the sun is coming up into the 12th.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We interpret this sort of theme of liberation at sunrise. It's like coming off of the death of your son overnight.
yeah, one of the simplest things to do is like get out of the house. It's like so we're a couple minutes over time, but we just want to run through a quick day so we can understand how to apply these houses throughout the day. So we talked yesterday about ideally we're waking up during Vata time in the 4 hours before sunrise. So let's start at the second house, which is 2 to 4 a.m. That is ideally we're dreaming. Either we're praying or dreaming, connecting with the ancestors. That second house is our ancestors, the values that we inherit. And so some form of prayer, meditation, dream, some way to connect with the ancestors. And then first house, the 2 hours before sunrise, is we want to be awake, want to come back to our body, right? So all of a sudden we're awake and we have, oh, I am me. I've awoken with some purpose. I'm alive today for a reason. And I want to take care of my body. I'm going to wake up and do my hygiene and maybe eat something and get dressed and put on my uniform for the day and set myself up to be who I am. And then that 12th house wants us out of the house, out into the world, transcend the little world that I exist in, that I woke up in, and get out into the world, connect with your larger purpose. It's really this invitation, first thing of the day, think about God. Think about the transcendent reality. When the sun, again, at sunrise, is a great time to contemplate life and like the whole cosmos. And what a way to start your day with this orientation towards everything that is. I am not just me. I am a part of the all that is. So start your day with that contemplation. And then the 11th house is a very social place. And so from 8 to 10 a.m. is a great time to schedule your, have a coffee meeting, have your psychotherapy appointment, make phone calls. This is some of the best business advice I've ever gotten. The first thing you do, make 3 phone calls. Doesn't matter who it is. Just start your day by reaching out to 3 people. And so that 11th house is the place to do that. It's your social enjoyment, your social pleasure. And so get out there and connect with society, be dynamic, have meetings. It's a great time to have your meetings, your sort of business meetings, and be connected. Because then the 10th house comes, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., and it's time to focus on your career. And what is your public responsibility? What are your ambitions? The sun is high in the sky. It's time to take public responsibility for what you believe in and go for it. And be ambitious, do work, be responsible. That 9th house comes, and really that's the pitta time of day. The sun is high in the sky. 10th and 9th house is like, what do I believe and what am I responsible for based on those beliefs? That's the time to do that. And it's like 10th house, I'm taking action on my beliefs. 9th house, I'm maybe reflecting on like, okay, based on what I've done and the results I've gotten, do I need to augment my beliefs a little bit? Do I need to adjust my plan and my understanding of reality? I've created something, I've gotten some feedback. Okay, what do I know now? So that there's that process. Okay, we're always checking the beliefs, right? I have faith, but then I'm also getting feedback from reality. Okay, maybe I need to adjust my understandings. And then we go into the 8th house, and this is the afternoon crash. It's like siesta time. And really it's like we want to eat our largest meal during that pitta time, 10th and 9th house. And then we want to have our siesta during that 8th house. Or it's a great time to get body work, actually. There's deep healing available. It's like the 8th house is the place of shadow and the unseen. And so to do something like that is a good idea. But generally I want to be really careful with the 8th house and go into it well resourced, right? You want to go into the shadow, but not frivolously. You want to be well resourced and stable to go in there. And then 7th house, the 2 hours before sunset, is about partnership. And so it's a great time to connect with your partners, or like end of the workday, where like, hey, we're in business together. Where are we at? What do we need to do tomorrow? How do we feel about things? Communicate. Hey, partner, I'm coming home. Do you need anything from the grocery store? How's your day going? That sort of check-in. That, okay, we're in relationship. It's also happy hour. Hey, let's go get a bite to eat and have a drink and connect and sit across the table from one another and be in partnership. 6th house is time to do the dishes and clean the house. It's, you know, the 2 hours after sunset. So you've gotten home, you're doing the domestic work, this stuff that just needs to be done. You're picking the kids up from school and feeding them and taking them to soccer practice, and then doing the dishes and sweeping the floor. 6th house stuff. Then you get to 5th house, which is 8 to 10 p.m. Watch a movie, make love. 5th house, creative, playful. It's also the time for your side hustle. It's like if you keeping a steady job, but you've got this other vision that you're working towards, cool. Do the dishes, and then take that 2 hours or 90 minutes to work on your side hustle, create something, do some sort of creative work. And then 4th house, deep into the psyche, deep sleep, going down underground. And then 3rd house is, again, good for us to be asleep during 3rd house time, because that's, you know, I would argue that most of the biggest mistakes people make in their lives happen between 12 and 2 a.m. And it's usually like egoic mistakes, right? It's like, oh, I really want this thing, person, 6th drink, or whatever it is, right? And so we want to be really, really careful. Best just be asleep at that time. My notes say that that's the end of the show. So I hope that's helpful, interesting. I'm happy to say I've got nowhere to go, so I'm happy to sit here and answer questions, but I want to offer you all the opportunity to leave. We're about 20 minutes past time, so I appreciate your patience and attention. And if you would like the recording, then please make sure I have your email address. This list that you put your email for here will only receive the recordings. I'll put some links for some invitations if you want to go further, but that email list will only just to send you these recordings. So yeah, let's stay connected. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm happy to be here. I like it here.
Is there any way for me, when I pull up my chart, how to know which house is my
It takes a little bit of interpretation, but one of the ways to imagine your chart is, you ever been in the science museum? They got the glass ball with all the electricity in it, and there's electricity everywhere in that ball, but you put your finger on it and all the electricity goes there, right? That's kind of how the chart works with planets. The planets are fingers, and the chart is the ball. So if you say you have like 4 planets in your 10th house, there's a lot of electricity zooming to that 10th house. There is energy in every house, but it's focused there.
So you look at which house has the most planets in it?
Yeah. And then and so that's a very general way to do it. The sun and moon are really prominent. They always have influence. There are particular planets that will have more influence than others, and there's a bunch of calculations about the strength of certain planets. But the sun and moon are primary, and then the third planet you want to look for is the planet that rules your first house. So whatever sign is your ascendant is ruled by a planet. And so like Aries ruled by Mars, Taurus ruled by Venus, Gemini ruled by Mercury, and all the way around, right? And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah. So So that's the third planet you want to look for. So the sun, moon, and the ruler of your ascendant.
So I don't know if this is necessarily a question, but I'm just gonna talk through something.
Okay, great.
So when I hear this come up, what I feel in my body is, how do you navigate through the rigidity and the potential desire to control with the fluidity of what life is? Because I feel like I'm trying to figure out how I would implement this in a very practical way for me, for us, for our business.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I don't want to have too tight of a grip on it to where I'm either using it as an excuse for something. And I feel like that's where astronomy is kind of in this, like, this is my own perception, this own, like a woo woo, oh, that person, no, you're not, you know, the memes that say, no, you're not a Virgo, you're just a bitch. Like that, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So how do you personally, since you've been practicing this discipline, navigate that rigidity and fluidity of not having too tight of, like, I'm not doing that because it's between 12 and 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Versus like, this is just what's
like,
happening.
hey, I'm in 12 and 2 o'clock, I'm gonna enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think a practical example is this class.
At this time. Yeah. It's an 8th house thing. And so there are, like, this is an esoteric, you know, underworld, like, astrology is a very 8th house thing, right? It is the sort of like hidden realm of things. So it's actually appropriate in a lot of ways. But it's a great question. And this distinction between like structure and flow is the whole game. And I think of it like in the other presentation, I had a slide, we can get to it. That's a photo of a ballroom. And there's all these big pillars and this solid marble floor, this solid structure. And you want the solid structure there so that you can then do the dance and swirl around and twirl and do the dance within it. And there's a great quote from Tom Robbins. He says something like, the amount of chaos we have within us is always in direct proportion, but the amount of order that we see is always in direct ratio to the amount of chaos we have within us. And so you'll see people who are super rigid. They're like, nope, I have to go to bed by 9:30, and it's like really intense. Like that's probably a counterbalancing force for a lot of inner chaos. And so if we can harmonize these two, we're like, it's like with good poetry, you have to learn the rules of grammar in order to break them in an interesting way. And so the 80-20 rule, where if you're mostly, you know, waking up early or like, you know, mostly getting good sleep and in rhythm, then sometimes you want to stay out all night and go dancing or whatever it is, and you've got the energy to do it. And you're generally taking care of yourself and generally aligned with the flow so that you can play with it and learn and dance with it skillfully. So that ultimately any moment is an auspicious moment if you do it right. And, you know, astrology is not an excuse. It's an access point for accelerated self-inquiry. And so it's about knowing like, oh, I have these tendencies, and the chart can really give language and structure to tendencies that we're sort of vaguely aware of. It's like, oh, that's what that's about. Oh, I have this experience all the time. It's like I've just named something, just like telling a story. Like, oh, this area of the sky is associated with this mythological story. And all of a sudden people are crying because they've been doing that their whole lives, but have never known what, like, why does this keep happening to me? It's like, oh, I'm the one creating that. And so that doesn't become a fatalistic thing where it's like, oh, that's in my chart, so I'm just going to keep creating that for my whole life. It's like, oh, I recognize that pattern. That pattern has a spectrum of potentials, depending on how much intelligence and awareness I'm bringing to it. And it can be in the shadow, in which case, I think it was Jung who said something like, if we don't look at our shadow, it will influence our whole lives and we'll call it fate. But if we start looking at it, then we can make conscious choices. And instead of this shadow expression, it becomes this conscientious thing. And it goes from I'm sick to I'm a healer. If that makes sense. Jackie, you trying to get out of here?
Yeah, only, but I wanted to see if anyone needs a clubhouse for anything. If not, then I'll look it up. I'd like to see you guys go look at it too. I was just gonna ask.
I don't.
Then I'm gonna lock up the clubhouse and then I'll see you guys all later. Thank
Thanks.
you. Have a great day.
Yeah.
So thinking about the wheel and the houses throughout the day.
Yeah.
The way I think about it, it's like the sun is in all the houses all the time.
No, it's not.
Relative to people around the world.
Yes, that's true.
For my sunrise, somebody in China is experiencing the sun moving into their sixth house.
Yeah.
Right. I'm seeing it coming. So it seems like something that's super critical in all of this stuff is sort of where you are at the moment.
Yes.
And you could sort of game this, right? Like if the Concorde were still flying and I could go to New York to London in 2 hours and pick up 2 hours of my day, I could go visit the sun in a different house. Energetically, it's a better time of day for whatever it is I got to do or something like that.
Yeah.
So what is it that Vedic astrology has to say about why is your physical location on the planet such a critical component of all this?
Yeah. This has to do with the way light changes as time moves through space. And this is where Einstein is really important, the relativity of it, because there's actually no way to ask the question, what's happening in a different place right now? It's like this is where Carlo Rovelli, that book I read, The Order of Time, is really valuable because he explains this very clearly. Asking what's happening right now on a planet 4 light years away is a nonsensical question. It's like, what's happening in Tokyo here in Phoenix? The answer is the question doesn't make sense. And so time moves more slowly at your feet than it does at your head. It moves more slowly at sea level than it does in the mountains. Microscopically so, but time dilates. And so to get on a plane and fly somewhere really quick is a distortion of time. So time is moving differently. And so your experience of it is going to shift. And so the other thing is, like, we could do astrology based on a heliocentric model, right? There's this sort of criticism of astrology that, like, well, everything's based on the Earth. And so it's like they didn't know that the sun was the center of the solar system. It's like, yeah, they did. But who cares what the astrology for the sun is? We are here. We want to know how light is going to change around us here now. And so it gets into sort of like the quantum realm of time, where tones, right, on around you, and to perceive beyond a certain distance is actually impossible. The concept of time is so relative that it only makes sense in really, because even like the light that's bouncing off you and hitting me right now, I can't actually know what you're doing right now, because by the time it took a nanosecond for the light to get from here there, so I'm always a little bit behind. And so to think of time as being just as relative as space is really this key to understand that it ebbs and flows and changes. And this room set up for this presentation is different than it will be on Thursday for Nora's cacao thing, and same room but different setup. So I don't know if that answers your question at all. Yeah, but it's a really yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing I was wondering is, like, when somebody books you for a consult, on whether it's Ayurveda or this, what you just presented in the last 2 days is vast.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're just like scratching the surface. Where do you begin with somebody? Because it's like in a 1 hour consult, you would touch 0.5% of this kind of stuff. Right?
Yeah.
People typically come and they have a very specific area of their life that they want to know. How to dietary stuff. How does Ayurveda inform that for me when I have a business decision to make? Is it usually something like that?
Usually people are coming for a reason. And even if they say, oh, I'm just curious, look at the chart, and like, okay, you're coming here for And they have to say, oh yeah, I'm just curious about my chart. It's like, okay, yeah, but you just got divorced, didn't you? Oh yeah, I didn't want to talk about that. It's like, well, but that's why you're here. And so it's always interesting so I always pull two charts right away. It's the chart of the person's date, time, location of birth, and the date, time, location that they booked the appointment. Because the moment they booked the appointment or the moment they submitted the intake form, something's happening. Their mind and body is inspired, oriented towards asking a question. And so what is that question? And so the chart of that moment tells a lot about what's actually happening. And so often it's so fun to see, like, people ask this question, but pretty quickly it's like, it's really about this, isn't it? And so usually it's very obvious why people are whether they know it or not. And so sometimes it's surprising where it goes, but mostly in a session, I'm not teaching any of this, right? My sort of professional trajectory is to get to a point where I can give a whole 60 or 90-minute astrology session without saying the name of a planet or the sign, right? I'm just going to start telling you stories about yourself, and you don't have to know anything about astrology. You don't have to know the name of any planets, and I'll just start telling you stories. Not there yet, but that's where that's sort of like that. Again, that's sort of the extreme, but that's where I would like to go, so that we just get in the session, we just start having a conversation that's informed by all this. And that's really, a lot of people use astrology as a fatalistic thing, or like making predictions. It's not how I practice. You bring in internal family systems work and nature-based psychotherapy practices, so that really this is an access point for a deeper conversation. It's really an opportunity to have a real conversation. What's really happening? All your parts are welcome, because the astrology chart is really a naked photo in so many ways, right? And so cool, like, what's actually happening, and then how can we work with it in a way? And so this is where, like, some people like test astrologers with, I'm not telling you anything, and I just want you to give me a reading and tell me what's relevant. I don't even try to practice that way, because I'm more interested in, tell me everything you know about what's happening, and then we'll use the chart to go even deeper into it. And the more detail you give me, the more detail I can give you back. Because if you don't tell me that you're trying to buy a new car, then I don't know to look at the charts that can give us an idea of what kind of car you should look for. And so there's that's what's more interesting to me, is like, cool, like, you're trying to make a decision, tell me everything you know about that decision, and then we can go in and look at all the factors that play in the chart. And then all that is an offering to see what you recognize in that. So often it's like, looking at the chart, we can see, oh, it looks like you have like a Santa Claus type figure in your life. And people are like, oh, I know exactly who that is. And all of a sudden, okay, that person's playing this role in this part of your life. It's like, oh, okay, I'd seen them as this, but they're playing that. And it just helps to sort out, it's just all about your awareness and having these reference points and just a mirror for you. Yeah.
Do you do them with couples?
Yes.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was just individual.
Yeah. We can absolutely look at two charts together. It's a tricky thing. Just to give an example, I had a long-time client who had been coming to me for years, and then she recommended, she wanted her husband to come work with me as well. Yeah, cool, yeah, great. But then, so I worked with her husband, and that was great, and getting him going and inspired in so many ways. And then she came back to me for a reading, and we were looking, okay, what's coming up for the next 6 months? And there was a period that's like a bunch of indications for like divorce. So what do I say? Do I tell her? Like, because what I say carries weight. And if I say it looks like you're going to get divorced, it plants the seed, and no matter what he does, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's just that happened just last year, and so I've been thinking about my couples consultations. But what I've decided is that if I have an existing client, I will only work with them and not with their partner. But if you like come with your partner to start with, then we can go from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for coming. I appreciate your being here, attention, questions. Yeah, this is fun. Thanks for letting me live my life's purpose. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
thanks.
sorry, did she end up being divorced?
No, they're still together and better than ever. Because again, it's nothing is right or wrong or good or bad. Just there are some challenges, and so by describing the qualities, by knowing, hey, this might be a challenging time. You're going to be frustrated with it. Okay, you're prepared for that, and you can frame it in the process of a spiritual evolution, as opposed to like, well, this is broken, and so they work through it. It's great.
I can sign up for your moon cycle newsletter through your website.
Yes.
Okay. I'll do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm going to send these recordings to everybody on this list, and in that email, I'll include a couple links with info and opportunities to connect more. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks
Appreciate
again.
you. Oh yeah.